Okay, so we are going to do a little texture explore today. So, what I did was I actually just photographed some textures from around my apartment. And, um, if you're stuck indoors and you can't go out and take pictures outside, you can really create textures from anything, and I think everybody can even just find different textures of different fabric they have in the house or just anything. Um, and I'm going to kind of show you just some of the different textures I photographed around my house and how easy it is to convert them into textures that we can use in our imagery. So first I have this texture up top left here that is like a terry cloth, kind of like it's basically towel texture. This is from a sweatshirt. It's this kind of heather gray texture, this like pattern here. This is some just like burn marks on some foil from just a tray cooking. This is another fabric, kind of canvas like fabric. Down here on the lower right, we have the texture of a sponge. This is this kind of wood grain. It's actually bamboo from a cutting board. This is a canvas with a print on it from some artwork I have in my house. And this is the skin of a sweet potato. So again, just to show you, even around your house, you can kind of take pictures of a lot of things just with your phone. That's basically what all these are. And you can convert them into useful textures for anything that you want to use in your designs. And, ultimately you can convert them into brushes or, use them on type and all kinds of uses for them. But I'm just going to show you how you take simple images from, anywhere and convert them into textures. So what I like to do always when I'm working with textures is think about them in black and white or grayscale, basically, right? So you can go up to image and convert them all to grayscale if you want, or if you want to just keep them in RGB or CMYK, you can you can add an adjustment layer. If you're in RGB, you can add this black and white adjustment layer, or what I actually prefer is the gradient map in black and white. So I'm going to hit D just to make sure I have my default black and white colors here. D is a quick key for default, and then I'm going to add a gradient map, and that is down towards the bottom of these adjustment layers down here. And again, you can see I can turn that on and off now to see the difference between what it's like in grayscale versus just fully color in RGB. And another adjustment layer I like to use is curves. That's one where I can really kind of pump up the contrast. So that's my favorite adjustment layer to use for contrast, because it gives you this kind of scale here from like midtones to the highlights and shadows. But I always kind of the middle of this line here, you can click and drag, and that's the midtones, and you can make the midtones darker, make them lighter. But the beauty of this is you can add as many points as you want. So if I click one point here in the midtones and then click another point, I can create this curve here, and that really is giving me some nice contrast. And you can mess around with these things if you want even more contrast, so it's like really feeling black and white. You can just play with these points, or if you want to have more of that gray tone to it, that's fine too. But this is super easy, and there I have pretty good texture here. And as we know, anytime we create anything in our image, whatever's visible, we could go to channels and make a selection by holding command and clicking in the little thumbnail area. And if I add a new layer here and hide everything else, I'm going to fill it, and then I'm also going to show you what it looks like when you invert the selection. So I'm going to fill with black the selection that it picked up right now. But when you're in RGB and you make a selection, it usually picks up the negative. So this should actually fill in, instead of what was, previously a dark value, it's actually going to probably fill in the opposite here. So when I hit Option Delete for the black, and I'm going to hit Command D to deselect, you can see it filled in the opposite of the selection, of what the black is. So actually, if I turn all this on, it'll kind of look, like it's just filling in the negative space of what that black was. I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to go to channels again, and I'm going to command click on the RGB channel. If this is CMYK, you just click on the CMYK channel. Go back to layers. I'm going to add a new layer, but this time I'm going to invert the selection, Command Shift I, and that way it will select the darker bits. Now, again, if this is a CMYK, it kind of works in reverse. But I'm going to pick a color here, and then I'm going to fill it with that color. Command D, deselect, and I will hide everything. And I'm actually just going to add a white layer below, so you can see that I have created this texture that's easy to grab now as a channel selection. And I will move that down so I can turn these both on, and you can see with both of them, I can change the colors of things using any of these selections. And now that I have both of these, I can select either one of these, whether it's the the negative space in between, or that kind of lighter value that's really coming from the original wood texture. So that is pretty much what I'm going to do to the rest of these, but I'm just going to hide all this stuff for now. Command D, deselect, and I'm just going to keep all these textures kind of in my window, and then at the end you can see how I will have a kind of whole bunch of different textures to work from. So again, I'm going to do the same exact thing, D for default, and then I will add a gradient map, and again that will just make it black and white. And I am going to do the same thing with my curves, add a curves layer, and I'm just going to do all this stuff real quick, but I'm going to play around with it. I'm going to explore all these things, but like I said, I'll do this kind of quick. And you can see, now I have this kind of grungy texture going here, and it depends on how much of it I want to keep. But this is kind of, again, just all these things just coming from textures found around my apartment. Okay, so that's another one. That's pretty nice. I like that. Let's go on with the sponge, gradient map, add some curves here, and again, you can just see, just playing around until I get a texture I like, and then this becomes another kind of grunge, distressed texture. This one actually, even though this came from a sponge, it kind of feels like this, like a crater-like texture. Same thing here. I have this canvas-like fabric. I'm going to add that black and white gradient map. And then I will go to curves. And see what I get here. I get this kind of canvasy texture, and I'm really just like, kind of playing around with this. But then, again, this kind of, it looks a little distressed because I'm doing it really high contrast, but you can, play around with it and get it to be something more to your liking. And that is a canvasy texture. Pretty easy. I have this heather texture from this sweat material. Again, that was already, pretty close to grayscale, but this really just puts the final touches on it. And then again, you can see I have this, and even though this started as fabric, it really just becomes this nice grainy texture. Again, these are all kind of becoming more like distressed textures because of the contrast level that I'm putting on everything, but feel free to play around with the contrast of everything. Again, gradient map and curves, and then you know, and these are just like unexpected textures that you get out of like everyday materials and things that you find around. You know, again, just very interesting. This is coming from like that towel texture. And then, you know, the great thing about all these is you can make brushes out of everything too. So again, gradient map, curves, and, you know, depending on, you know, if I want to use this top part or if I want that top part to be darker, I can kind of mess around contrast and just keep playing with these curves till I get something I like. But again, you know, that's pretty cool. And last one I think is this sweet potato. Gradient map that, curves, and there you go. This almost looks like it's like a concrete like wall kind of texture. And you know, you can turn all these things off and just reveal the original image, and you can see that is in fact a close-up of a sweet potato. So there you have it, and I'm just gonna, you know, kind of position all these things together so you can see all the different textures that we have. I'm gonna hide the tools and just kind of put all these together, but you can see so easy to just get all these textures, and just like that you have a whole palette full of textures.